The desperate solution. Dr. Sarah Chen stared at the data streaming across her quantum computer's holographic display, her hands trembling as she double-checked the calculations for the 100th time. The numbers didn't lie. In approximately 18 months, the Galactic Empire's invasion fleet would reach the outer edges of the solar system. Their technological superiority was overwhelming. Humanity stood no chance against their antimatter weapons and dark energy drives. Unless she took a deep breath and activated her secure link to the United Earth Defense Council. Within minutes, the faces of humanity's leadership materialized in her laboratory, some as holograms, others physically present. Among them was Admiral James Carter, his weathered face bearing the weight of defending Earth against an enemy that outmatched them in every conventional metric. "Dr. Chen," he nodded gravely. "Your message said this was urgent. What I'm about to propose will sound impossible." Sarah began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "But I've found a way to give humanity a fighting chance. We're going to transform Jupiter into the largest warship ever conceived." The silence that followed was deafening. Then, predictably, the room erupted in chaos. Minister Wang from the Asian Coalition scoffed openly. "Transform Jupiter? The entire planet? That's preposterous." Sarah activated her main display, projecting a complex series of equations and engineering schematics. With recent breakthroughs in quantum manipulation and dark matter containment, we can convert Jupiter's mass into a structured form while maintaining its gravitational influence on the solar system. The technology exists. We've just never had the reason or resources to attempt it on this scale. Admiral Carter leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Even if this is possible, the resource requirements would be astronomical." "They are," Sarah agreed. "We'd need to redirect 60% of Earth's industrial capacity, convert the entire asteroid belt into construction materials, and develop new technologies at an unprecedented rate. But consider the alternative, waiting for the Drachnids to arrive with their planet-killer weapons." The room fell silent again, but this time it was different. Sarah could see the wheels turning in their minds as they processed the implications. Dr. Patel, head of the Global Science Council, was the first to speak up. "The gravitational implications alone would be catastrophic if we make even a small mistake," he warned. "We could destabilize the entire solar system." Sarah nodded. "That's why I've spent the last year developing a new branch of gravitational mathematics. We can maintain Jupiter's gravitational influence while transforming its structure. It's complex, but it's possible." Admiral Carter stood up, his decision visible in his posture. "How long would this take?" 15 months if we start immediately and commit every available resource," Sarah replied. "We'll be cutting it close, but we can have it operational before the Drachnid fleet arrives." The next few hours were a blur of questions, technical discussions, and increasingly heated debates. Sarah presented simulation after simulation, addressed concerns about everything from resource allocation to the risks of alerting the Drachnids to their plans. Finally, Admiral Carter called for a vote. The decision was made. Project Olympus was born. The following weeks saw the largest mobilization in human history, all conducted under the utmost secrecy. Millions of workers were relocated to orbital construction facilities, their families told they were working on defensive installations. The asteroid belt became a hive of activity as automated mining ships began harvesting materials on an unprecedented scale. Sarah found herself working 20-hour days, coordinating with engineering teams across the solar system. The technical challenges were immense. They needed to develop new materials that could withstand the intense pressures and temperatures, create control systems capable of managing a planet-sized vessel, and solve countless other problems that had never been encountered before. 3 months into the project, they faced their first major crisis. The quantum containment fields designed to hold Jupiter's mass in place while they restructured it were showing unexpected fluctuations. Sarah spent 72 sleepless hours working with her team to redesign the field generators, knowing that a single mistake could tear the solar system's largest planet apart. But for every setback, there were breakthroughs. The development of dark matter manipulation technology progressed faster than anyone had dreamed possible. New forms of artificial intelligence were created to manage the millions of simultaneous operations required. Humanity was pushing the boundaries of science and engineering further in months than they had in decades. 6 months into the project, the first visible changes to Jupiter became apparent. To any casual observer, they would appear as strange atmospheric disturbances, but Sarah knew they were watching the planet's transformation begin. Layer by layer, they were converting Jupiter's gaseous mass into something new, a vessel of unprecedented power. The Galactic Empire scouts would undoubtedly notice something was happening, but by the time they realized the true scope of the project, it would be too late. Humanity was betting everything on this single audacious plan. As Sarah watched the construction feeds from her command center on Ganymede, she couldn't help but feel a mix of pride and terror. They were attempting something that would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. If they succeeded, humanity would no longer be a primitive species at the mercy of advanced civilizations. If they failed, they might not only doom Earth, but potentially destroy their entire solar system. The weight of that responsibility kept her awake at night, but it also drove her forward. As she reviewed the latest progress reports, a message from Admiral Carter flashed across her screen. The Drachnid fleet had changed course, accelerating. They now had only 14 months until first contact. Sarah took a deep breath and sent out an alert to all project leads. They needed to work faster. The race to transform Jupiter into humanity's ultimate weapon had become even more desperate. The future of Earth would depend on their success. Project Titan rising. The orbital shipyards around Jupiter's moon, Callisto, hummed with activity as construction drones swarmed like metallic insects against the backdrop of the gas giant. Chief Engineer Marcus Rodriguez watched through the reinforced viewport of Control Station Alpha, his dark eyes tracking the progress of the largest engineering project in human history. "Status report on the core containment matrix," he asked, his voice carrying the weariness of someone who hadn't properly slept in weeks. His assistant AI, responded immediately. "Core transformation is at 37% completion. Dark matter stabilizers are functioning within acceptable parameters, though we're seeing some strain on the quantum field generators in Sector 7. Marcus frowned, pulling up the detailed diagnostics on his neural interface. The quantum field generators were crucial. They were what allowed them to reshape Jupiter's mass, while maintaining its gravitational influence on the solar system. Even a minor fluctuation could have catastrophic consequences. "Divert power from the secondary arrays," he ordered, "and get Dr. Chen on the line. She needs to see this." As if summoned by his words, Sarah Chen's hologram materialized in the control room. She looked as exhausted as Marcus felt, but her eyes still burned with determination. "The field variations are getting worse," Marcus said without preamble. "We're pushing the generators beyond their theoretical limits." Sarah's hologram walked through the floating displays, studying the data. "We knew this would happen. The math predicted instabilities once we reached 35% transformation. That's why we developed the adaptive compensation protocols." "The protocols aren't keeping up," Marcus countered. "We're seeing cascade failures in the containment fields. If this continues..." A violent tremor cut him off, shaking the entire station. Warning alerts flashed across every screen as Jupiter's atmosphere began to churn violently, vast storms forming where the transformation process was underway. "Emergency shutdown of Sector 7. Sarah ordered, her hands flying over virtual controls. "Redirect power to the stabilization grid." For several tense minutes, they worked in synchronized precision, their teams across the solar system responding to the crisis. Slowly, the violent disturbances began to subside, but the incident had cost them precious time they couldn't afford to lose. "We need to redesign the containment system," Sarah said finally. "The current configuration won't hold once we start converting the core." Marcus ran his hands through his graying hair. "That could take weeks, maybe months. The Drachnid fleet will be here in less than a year," Sarah finished. "I know. But if we don't solve this now, We won't have a weapon to fight them with. We'll have a catastrophic failure that could tear apart half the solar system. The decision was made. For the next 3 weeks, the best minds in human science worked around the clock, revolutionizing quantum physics and engineering on the fly. Sarah led the theoretical work while Marcus handled the practical implementation, pushing their teams to the limit. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a young physicist working on one of the outer construction platforms, discovered a way to use Jupiter's own magnetic field to stabilize the quantum containment system. It was brilliant, elegant, and most importantly, it would work. Implementation of the new system required them to temporarily halt the transformation process, losing valuable time, but there was no alternative. As construction crews retrofitted the massive network of field generators, Marcus took the opportunity to address another growing concern. "We need to talk about the weapons systems," he told Sarah during one of their daily briefings. "The power requirements for the main gun array are beyond anything we initially calculated." Sarah nodded, pulling up the latest designs. The weapons systems were a crucial part of the transformation. They weren't just converting Jupiter into a mobile fortress, they were turning it into the most powerful warship ever conceived. "We can tap directly into the core once it's fully converted," she suggested. "The energy output would be orders of magnitude beyond what we originally planned. And if something goes wrong, then we'll have bigger problems than power distribution," Sarah said grimly. "But we don't have a choice. The Drachnid's technology is far beyond ours. We need every advantage we can get." The weeks turned into months as the project continued. The transformation reached deeper into Jupiter's mass, converting layers of hydrogen and helium into advanced alloys and energy systems. The planet's famous Great Red Spot was repurposed into a massive energy collection array, while its powerful storms were harnessed to power secondary weapon systems. 9 months before the Drachnid fleet's anticipated arrival, they faced another crisis. The inner core transformation triggered a series of gravitational waves that threatened to destabilize the orbits of Jupiter's moons. Marcus and his teams worked frantically to adjust the containment fields, knowing that the loss of any of their construction bases would be catastrophic. They succeeded, but the incident highlighted the unprecedented nature of what they were attempting. They were literally reshaping a planet, turning it into something that had never existed before in the history of the galaxy. As the transformation passed the 60% mark, the first weapon systems came online for testing. The sight of energy beams capable of vaporizing small moons shooting from what used to be Jupiter's atmosphere sent a clear message. Humanity was no longer a primitive species to be conquered. But with each success came new challenges. The power distribution network required constant adjustment as more systems came online. The artificial intelligence needed to control such a massive vessel had to be developed from scratch, pushing the boundaries of computer science. And always, there was the countdown to the Drachnid fleet's arrival. 7 months before the deadline, Admiral Carter arrived at Control Station Alpha for a personal inspection. Marcus and Sarah led him through the progress reports, showing him how the transformed Jupiter was taking shape. "Will it be ready?" Carter asked simply. Sarah and Marcus exchanged glances before she answered. "It has to be. We've passed the point of no return. Jupiter will never be a normal planet again. Either we complete the transformation and have a chance against the Drachnids, or—" She didn't need to finish the sentence. They all knew the stakes. Humanity had committed everything to this project. Their resources, their best minds, their future, all of it rested on their ability to complete this impossible task. As they watched through the viewport, another section of Jupiter's atmosphere shimmered and transformed, revealing the metallic surface beneath. Their impossible dream was slowly becoming reality, but the hardest parts were still ahead. The race against time continued. First contact. First blood. High Admiral Kextolv of the Drachnid Empire stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, his scaled hands clasped behind his back as he studied the tactical display. The human solar system lay before them, a primitive realm ripe for conquest. Or so he had thought. "High Admiral," his sensor officer called out, mandibles clicking in agitation. "We're detecting anomalous readings from the gas giant designated Jupiter." Kextel's inner eyelids flickered with interest. Their advanced scouts had reported unusual activity in this system, but nothing concrete. "Elaborate." "The planet's mass signature is unchanged, but its composition." The officer paused, running another scan. "It's not possible. The readings suggest the entire planet has been transformed into some kind of artificial structure." Before Kexel could respond, a transmission cut through their communications channels. The holographic image of a human female appeared on the bridge, her expression resolute. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen of Earth's Defense Force. Your fleet has entered restricted space. Turn back now, or we will be forced to demonstrate our capabilities." Kextel's scales rippled with amusement. These primitives had somehow managed to build something interesting, but they couldn't possibly hope to challenge the might of the Galactic Empire. He gave the order that would start the war. Launch the first wave. On board the transformed Jupiter, now designated as the EDF Prometheus, Sarah watched the Drachnid ships accelerate toward them. She turned to Admiral Carter, who stood at the command station. "They're not backing down." "They never do," Carter replied grimly. "Combat stations. Initiate primary weapons charge." Throughout the massive vessel, energy began to flow through systems that had never been tested in actual combat. The former Great Red Spot, now a massive energy collection array, pulsed with power as it fed the main weapon systems. Marcus Rodriguez's voice came through the command channel from engineering. "Core energy output stable. All systems responding. We're as ready as we'll ever be." The Drachnid fleet approached in perfect formation, their ships sleek and deadly. Energy weapons began to fire, testing the Prometheus's defenses, the transformed planet's shield system, drawing power directly from its converted core, absorbed the impacts without strain. "Return fire," Carter ordered. "Show them what we can do." Sarah activated the targeting systems she had helped design. The first shot from the Prometheus's main cannon used less than 1% of their available power. The beam of concentrated energy, guided by quantum fields, crossed the vast distance almost instantly. It struck a Drachnid cruiser, passing through its shields as if they didn't exist. The ship didn't explode. It simply ceased to exist, its matter converted to energy by the weapon's effect. Silence fell over the Drachnid command bridge as they watched one of their most powerful ships vanish. Kextel's scales had lost their color. "Impossible," he whispered. But the humans weren't finished. The Prometheus began to move, its massive form accelerating with grace that should have been impossible for something its size. Secondary weapon arrays came online, filling space with defensive fire that picked off smaller Drachnid ships with terrifying precision. "High Admiral," his tactical officer reported, voice shaking. "Their weapon systems are unlike anything in our database. They're using technologies we thought were theoretical." Kextel watched as another blast from the human vessel's main weapon carved through his fleet. These weren't the primitives they had expected to find. Somehow, in the brief time since they had detected the Drachnid approach, humanity had transformed itself into a force that could challenge the Empire. On the Prometheus, Sarah monitored the battle through multiple data streams. The vessel was performing better than their simulations had predicted. The quantum core, created from Jupiter's transformed mass, provided nearly limitless power. Their weapons were proving devastatingly effective against Drachnid technology. "They're pulling back," Carter announced, watching the enemy fleet retreat to a safer distance. "Looks like they need time to reconsider their approach." Sarah nodded, but she knew this was just the beginning. They'll be back with a larger force. The Empire won't accept this challenge to their dominion. "Let them come," Marcus said over the comm. "The transformation is complete. All systems are fully operational. We can take anything they throw at us." The next few hours were tense as they monitored the Drachnid fleet's movements. Sarah used the time to analyze the combat data, making minor adjustments to their systems. The battle had proved their theories correct. The transformed Jupiter was the most powerful warship ever created. Admiral Carter called a strategy meeting in the main command center. Holograms of Earth's leadership joined them as they discussed their next moves. "We've shown them we can fight," Carter said, "but we need to be prepared for their response. The Empire controls thousands of systems. They can bring resources to bear that we can't match, even with the Prometheus." Sarah pulled up new tactical displays. "We don't need to match them ship for ship. The Prometheus can protect our solar system. More importantly, we've shown them that humanity isn't the easy target they thought we were." "They'll be back," Marcus warned. "And next time, they'll be better prepared." Sarah looked out at the stars through the command center's viewport. Somewhere out there, the Drachnid fleet was regrouping, planning their next move. The easy victory they had expected had turned into something very different. On the Eternal Dominion, High Admiral Kextal was sending an urgent message to the Imperial Court. The humans had changed the rules of engagement. What was supposed to be a simple conquest had become a real war. As both sides prepared for the next phase of the conflict, one thing was clear: humanity's transformation of Jupiter had forever changed the balance of power in the galaxy. The question now was, how would the Drachnid Empire respond to this unprecedented challenge to their supremacy? The first battle was over, but the war was just beginning. Empire's counterstrike. The Imperial Palace on Drachnid Prime glowed with an eerie blue light as the Empire's highest military command gathered for an emergency war council. High Admiral Kextal stood before the Imperial throne, where Emperor Vexthor's massive form loomed in the shadows. "You mean to tell me," the Emperor's voice rumbled like distant thunder, "that these primitives transformed an entire gas giant into a weapon? And this weapon defeated our most advanced fleet?" Kextal's scales rippled with barely suppressed tension. "The humans have achieved what we thought impossible, Your Imperial Majesty. They've harnessed technologies that our scientists considered theoretical. The vessel they've created is an abomination that threatens the very foundation of our empire," Vexthor interrupted. "If other species see that we can be challenged, everything we've built over millennia could crumble." The Emperor rose, his massive form casting long shadows across the chamber. "Summon the Grand Fleet. All of it. We will crush this human invention and remind the galaxy why the Drachnid Empire has ruled unopposed for 10,000 years." Aboard the Prometheus, Sarah Chen studied the long-range sensor data with growing concern. "They're gathering ships from every corner of their empire," she reported to Admiral Carter. "The sensor network we placed at their major transit points is detecting massive fleet movements." Carter nodded grimly. "How many?" "At least 15,000 vessels so far, and more are joining every hour. They're stripping their conquered worlds of defensive fleets. This is everything they have." Marcus Rodriguez joined the conversation through his neural link from engineering. "The good news is that the Prometheus is operating at peak efficiency. The quantum core is stable, and we've increased power output by another 15% since the first battle." "Will it be enough?" Carter asked quietly. Sarah wished she had a better answer. "We're about to find out." The Drachnid attack began 3 days later. It started with a massive quantum pulse that temporarily disrupted the Prometheus's long-range sensors. When the interference cleared, the human crew found themselves surrounded. The Drachnid fleet had appeared simultaneously from multiple directions, using some form of coordinated jump technology that humanity had never seen before. "They've learned," Sarah muttered as she analyzed the enemy formation. "They're positioning themselves to limit our firing arcs and divide our attention." The first wave of attacks came not from the capital ships, but from swarms of smaller vessels. Millions of drone fighters filled space around the Prometheus, their combined energy signatures creating interference with targeting systems. "They're trying to overwhelm our point defense grid," Marcus reported as his engineering teams worked to compensate. "And they've modified their shields. Our secondary weapons aren't as effective anymore." Carter's voice remained steady as he issued commands. "Activate the gravitational defense systems. Let's show them another surprise. The Prometheus's outer hull began to pulse with dark energy. Suddenly, the space around the massive vessel distorted. Thousands of Drachnid drones were caught in artificial gravity wells, crushed into microscopic points of matter or torn apart by tidal forces. But this was just the beginning. The main Drachnid fleet opened fire. Their combined firepower enough to demolish a small planet. The Prometheus's shields held, but the strain was evident. Shield capacity at 82% and dropping, Marcus reported. They've adapted their weapons to resonate with our defense frequencies. Sarah's hands flew over her control surfaces, switching to dynamic shield modulation, preparing main weapon for wide dispersion burst. The battle raged for hours. The Prometheus destroyed hundreds of Drachnid ships, but thousands more took their place. The Empire was willing to sacrifice entire battle groups to probe for weaknesses, to find some way to overcome this human superweapon. A critical moment came when a group of specialized Drachnid vessels managed to create a localized disruption in the Prometheus's quantum fields. For a brief moment, a section of the transformed Jupiter's hull reverted to its gaseous state. Hull breach in Sector 47. Marcus shouted. Quantum containment failing. Sarah's mind raced. They had prepared for this possibility, but the reality was more dangerous than their simulations. If the quantum transformation began to unravel, the results would be catastrophic. Divert all auxiliary power to the containment grid, she ordered. Initiate emergency protocols Alpha 7. Throughout the massive vessel, backup systems engage. Automated repair units swarmed the affected area, working to stabilize the quantum fields. It was like trying to freeze a river in mid-flow, but slowly the breach began to seal. The Drachnids pressed their advantage, concentrating fire on the weakened section. The Prometheus's main weapon was temporarily offline as power was diverted to containment systems. They were vulnerable. That's when Admiral Carter revealed their final surprise. Execute Operation Sunstorm, he commanded. Deep within the Prometheus's core, where Jupiter's metallic hydrogen had been transformed into something entirely new, a carefully prepared sequence activated. The vessel's entire outer hull began to radiate with intense energy. Quantum resonance cascade initiating, Sarah announced. All friendly vessels clear the area. The space around the Prometheus erupted with pure energy. It was like a star going nova, but controlled, directed. The quantum cascade rippled outward in a sphere of destruction that overwhelmed Drachnid shields and reduced their ships to their component atoms. When the energy storm cleared, nearly a third of the Imperial fleet had been vaporized. The remaining ships began to pull back, their perfectly coordinated formation now in disarray. But the Prometheus had paid a price for this defense. Power levels were critical, and multiple systems were strained to their limits. We need time to regenerate, Marcus reported. Core stability is fluctuating. If they hit us with another coordinated attack in the next few minutes. Sarah looked at the tactical display, watching the Drachnid fleet regroup. They had bloodied the Empire's nose, shown them that even their full might couldn't easily overcome humanity's greatest achievement. But the battle wasn't over. As if to confirm her thoughts, new energy signatures began to appear at the edge of the system. More Drachnid ships, these even larger than the ones they'd faced so far. They're bringing in their siege weapons, Carter said grimly. The ones they used to crack open fortress worlds. The Prometheus had won the first phase of this battle, but the Empire was far from defeated. As they prepared for the next assault, Sarah couldn't help but wonder. Had humanity's greatest achievement only delayed the inevitable, or could they find a way to truly turn the tide? The answer would come soon enough. The Empire's next wave was approaching, and this time, they were bringing enough firepower to reshape solar systems. Balance of power. The Drachnid siege weapons were unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. Massive cylindrical vessels, each the size of Earth's moon, approached in a triangular formation. Their hulls rippled with dark energy patterns that distorted the very fabric of space-time around them. Analysis. Admiral Carter demanded. watching the new threat approach. Sarah Chen's fingers danced across her control surfaces, scanning the enormous vessels. They're generating some kind of artificial singularity. The power readings are off the scale. If those things get within range, they could tear the Prometheus apart at the quantum level. Marcus finished through the command link. The containment fields wouldn't stand a chance. The situation was dire. The Prometheus's core was still stabilizing after the quantum resonance cascade, their power levels far from optimal. The main Drachnid fleet had regrouped, forming a massive sphere around them to prevent escape. And now these planet-killer weapons were moving into position. That's when Sarah noticed something in the sensor data. The singularity generators. They're affecting local space-time in a way that's similar to our quantum transformation technology. How does that help us? Carter asked. A plan began to form in Sarah's mind. It was desperate, possibly suicidal, but they were out of options. What if we could turn their own weapons against them? Use our quantum fields to redirect their singularity effect. The power requirements would be enormous, Marcus warned. We'd have to divert everything, including life support reserves. One mistake, and we'd lose containment of Jupiter's transformed mass. Carter looked at the tactical display, watching the siege weapons power up. Do we have a choice? Initiating emergency power protocols, Sarah announced. Marcus, I need you to reconfigure the quantum field generators. We're going to create a resonance pattern that matches their singularity frequency. As the engineering teams worked frantically to implement Sarah's plan, the Drachnid siege weapons opened fire. Space itself seemed to tear open as artificial black holes began to form around the Prometheus. The massive vessel shuddered as gravitational forces tried to pull it apart. Field generators at maximum. Marcus shouted over the sound of straining systems, core stability dropping. Sarah's hands flew over her controls, making microscopic adjustments to the quantum fields. They needed perfect timing. Prepare to reverse polarity on my mark. On the bridge of the Imperial flagship, Emperor Vexthor watched with satisfaction as the human superweapon began to break apart under the siege weapon's assault. Finally, he rumbled. Show these primitives the true might of thee. His words were cut off as sensor alarms screamed. Something was happening to the singularity fields. Aboard the Prometheus, Sarah saw the moment arrive. Now. The transformed Jupiter's quantum fields inverted, creating a complex resonance pattern with the Drachnid weapon's singularity generators. Instead of fighting against the gravitational distortions, they began to channel them, redirect them. Space twisted. The artificial black holes created by the siege weapons started to curve back on themselves, drawn by the Prometheus's quantum manipulation. Before the Drachnid engineers could react, their own weapons' effects were turned against them. The first siege weapon imploded, crushed by its own singularity field. The second followed moments later, its massive hull collapsing into a point of infinite density. The third managed to power down its generators, but not before the gravitational backlash tore it in half. By the first egg, Emperor Vexthor whispered, watching his unstoppable siege weapons destroy themselves. What are these humans? But the battle wasn't over. The Prometheus's desperate gambit had worked, but at a terrible cost. Multiple systems were failing, power levels were critical, and the quantum containment fields were becoming unstable. We can't maintain transformation integrity, Marcus reported, his voice strained. The core is beginning to revert. Sarah looked at the sensor data in horror. Parts of the Prometheus were starting to return to their original gaseous state. If they lost containment completely, the results would be catastrophic for the entire solar system. That's when Admiral Carter made his decision. Open a channel to the Emperor's flagship. Emperor Vexthor's massive holographic form appeared on the bridge. Before he could speak, Carter launched into his prepared words. "You've seen what we can do," he said firmly. "We transformed a gas giant into the most powerful weapon ever created. We defeated your best fleets. We turned your own siege weapons against you. And we did all this in less than 2 years, after learning of your approach." The Emperor's scales rippled with barely contained rage. but he remained silent. "Right now, the Prometheus is unstable," Carter continued. "If we lose containment, the quantum cascade will destroy everything in this system, including your fleet. Is that what you want? The loss of your entire military might in a futile attempt to conquer one system?" Sarah watched the exchange breathlessly, while working to stabilize the failing containment fields. The next few moments would determine the fate of humanity. Emperor Vexthor's inner eyelids flickered as he considered the situation. Finally, he spoke. "You've proven yourselves. Interesting. Perhaps there is room for discussion." Over the next hour, as engineering teams fought to stabilize the Prometheus, the foundations of a new galactic order were laid. The Galactic Empire would recognize Earth's independence and right to self-governance. Humanity would share some of their quantum transformation technology, while keeping the most crucial secrets to themselves. Both sides would maintain a respectful distance, each knowing the other was capable of devastating destruction. As the Drachnid fleet began its withdrawal, Sarah allowed herself to breathe normally for the first time in what felt like years. They had done it. Humanity had taken its place among the stars not through conquest or submission, but through innovation and determination. "The containment fields are stabilizing," Marcus reported. "We can begin repairs on the transformed sections. The Prometheus will survive." Admiral Carter nodded, looking out at the retreating Drachnid ships. "Today we proved something extraordinary, not just to the Empire, but to ourselves. Humanity isn't limited by what others think is impossible. When our backs are against the wall, we don't just survive. We transform the very rules of the game." Sarah smiled, thinking of how far they'd come. From a desperate plan to transform Jupiter into a weapon, they had achieved something unprecedented. They had forced the most powerful empire in the galaxy to treat them as equals. As repair crews began their work and diplomatic channels opened between Earth and the Empire, Sarah knew this was just the beginning. Humanity had proven they could achieve the impossible. The transformation of Jupiter was just the first step in their journey to reshape the galaxy. The balance of power had shifted, and a new era had begun.